Alright everyone, it's Adam here, I can't see the guy. Um, Come to the end of the Wishmaster franchise now. Ending it with Wishmaster 4, The Prophecy Fulfilled. Let's see. Coming the year of 2002. Fourth installment and also the final. Got it in this nice little collector series of Wishmaster Collection 4 film set Blu-ray. I've got a multi-region Blu-ray player. And this came abroad. It's not available here in the UK yet, but it should be pretty soon. If they don't, I understand why, because many would possibly say that the first movie is the only movie worth watching in this whole franchise. I agree and I don't agree. Briefly, I'll tell you why. Number one, I thought was great. The first movie with Andrew Divoff in was a great movie. Great effects, great acting. He was very creative with the wishes. And I liked the story. And it had everything in a gore movie and a horror movie that you'd want. You know, the gore, the language, everything. All there. And had a pretty good class, good cast as well. Robert Englund, Kane Hodder, Tony Todd, Andrew Divoff. Memorable cast. 2 was a major step down and I found it really disappointing. Part 3 I loathed. Absolutely hated Part 3, but Wishmaster 4, The Prophecy Fulfilled. I suppose many of you are saying why I'm not ranting on this movie. Because the answer is I'm not. That can only mean one reason. I like this movie. Many of you are going to say, Adam, you're fucking strange. Or many of you are going to say, Adam, what the fuck are you smoking? What the fuck are you drinking? Well, at the moment I'm drinking Coca-Cola. So it's not what I'm drinking. And I don't smoke, so it's nothing that I'm smoking. This is me speaking from the heart. I've got mixed emotions about Wishmaster 4, The Prophecy Fulfilled. But mainly of it is all positive. Some negative parts, some positive parts. I can understand people's reasons for hating this movie. I can understand the reasons. I've looked at the reasons. I've seen this movie for myself. But I've seen Wishmaster 4 loads of times. And the facts that people are stating about this movie are accurate. Alright? I admit that. But there's one thing we can surely all agree on. Wishmaster 4 is way better than Part 3. Many would say no, they're just as bad as each other, and number 4 was worse. But again, we're talking about people's opinions here. My opinion is Wishmaster 4 is way better than Part 3. And I'll state my opinions and reasons why. Better acting. I admit, it's not 5-star acting, and it's not acting that deserves Academy Awards. Because I think the guy who plays the Djinn in this movie, I forgot his name, he was a million times better than Jason Connery in the third movie. The guy playing the Djinn, the lawyer. I thought he did a fine job in his role. He was more convincing and he was more into his role than he was in Part 3. He's no Andrew Divoff, don't get me wrong. He'll never be as good as Andrew Divoff. Andrew Divoff made the Wishmaster. He made this franchise. But if I could pick anybody out of them two guys, Jason Connery and this guy, I'd choose this guy anytime. The lead girl. She was more convincing than the girl in Part 3. Not a 5-star actress. You do see a nice scene in this movie where she has sex with the lawyer, and yes, she's got a nice ass, and she do see her tits in the shower. So that's another good positive fact. So she's got a nice body, but that's not the main thing you look for in a movie. Well, at least on my account, I always look for the women with a nice ass and tits. But acting wise, she was more convincing than the girl in Part 3, I think. Not as more convincing as the girl in Part 1, but in this movie, I'll give her an exception. I love the kills in this movie. Not many of them, but I think they were more brutal than the ones in Part 3. Now, let's talk about some things that could be better about this movie. The script could have been a little bit better. Okay. But there's a few things I did like about this movie. I like the little twist about where she made a third wish saying, I wish I could love you for who you truly are. And that's the only wish that she can grant because love has to be given naturally. So that's a nice little twist. In choice. Well, I think it's best if I just go through the movie about what happens. I'll explain the good and bad things as I go along. Starts off with the lead girl and her boyfriend, having sex because they're celebrating that they've got their own new house. The film skips forward. We find out that the guy's now in a wheelchair. They're not properly separated, but again, at the same time, they don't talk to each other as much. And I'd have to say, the character I disliked in this movie the most was the guy in the wheelchair, because it was it was like a self-pity prick, basically. Like blaming her for the accident and blaming her because they don't have sex enough because he's now in a wheelchair. It was hard to like this guy. Despite him being like the hero at the end, it was really hard to like this guy. I don't know if that was meant to be the point of the character. I'll never know. But at the same time, she's working with this lawyer to try and settle the case about his accident. And he buys her a gift, which happens to be the jewel that contains the gin. Anyhow, when she leaves, the gin comes out of the jewel. He kills the lawyer, takes his face, and takes his identity, basically. So he's the leading role, the leading villain. And again, good facts. I thought, top it off, he's better than the guy in part 3. No Andrew Divoff, but he's the second best. Andrew Divoff, the lawyer, Jason. That's all I've got to say about that. Now, this is what I give my hats off to. There's nothing wrong with this guy's acting in this, I don't think. He's not a 5-star actor, but at the same time, he was pretty convincing in what he does. He acted professional. Like the scene where he's on the phone talking to that other guy on the end of the phone. While he's, because she wishes to handle the case, for him to handle the case, that was her first wish. So he's there on the phone talking to the guy, and while he's talking to him on the other line, the Wishmaster's making him pull out his tongue, stab himself in the face, stab a bit of part out of his nose, and he settles the case just before blowing his brains out, basically. But during that time of the whole scene, he was remaining calm on the phone, talking through it. He tells her to look at the facts that came through to the office. She's relieved that the case has been settled, and that's the first wish over. So the gore scene, it was there. I thought that was a very nice scene. Two good things put together all in one scene. The lawyer's acting and the fact that we saw a good gore scene in it. The second wish was when I was at a restaurant. This waitress wishes to be kissed, like these other two guys are kissing, so all the guys start kissing her in the restaurant. She wishes that her boyfriend could walk again, so he does. The third wish is where we get to things start getting a little interesting. Now, I really wish I would have worked harder on this script, because I think it could have been a making of a good sequel. Because a third wish is that she wishes she could love him for who he truly is, but she knows nothing about his real identity, that he's the Wishmaster, and he knows that love has to be given naturally, and it's only a wish that she can grant. That's a good little twist. I take my hats off to it for that. That's a good little twist. But she leaves, and we get worst CGI ever. Something you see in a PS1 game. These fires come up, and we see these fake-looking heads that you can never fucking imagine. Looks like something you'd see in a PS1 game, or cheap puppets. I'm guessing it's the other djinns or the ancestors of the djinn in this movie, asking him, grant the third wish. And he's trying to, negotiate with them, telling them that he can't grant the wish. It's only a wish she can grant. And I admit it was horrible CGI. I admit that. It seems like this movie was taking shortcuts to the cheapest ways possible. It seemed like as if they was looking for the cheap way out every single time. They didn't want to spend too much money. I mean, why couldn't they have just made 3 costumes and get 3 different actors to dress up in the costumes and make an appearance and then do that? Why have the crappy CGI that's something that you'd see in a PS1 game? Because the fight looked fucking terrible. But things move forward. The guy's still a prick to the leading girl who can now walk. And hard to like this character. I mean, we see another bizarre scene where yet again another angel, just like in the third movie, comes down to Earth. Apparently, his mission is now to kill the girl, the lead girl, before the wish can be granted. And I get confused at this point. I'm thinking, is this guy meant to be a good guy or a bad guy? He can be a good guy because he's trying to stop the evil, but at the same time he's a bad guy because there's a scene where he's in this shop and he chops off this woman's head who's trying to call the police on him. So I'm thinking, is this a good guy or a bad guy? I have no fucking idea. And he's given like the most pointless role ever because he's fighting with the Wishmaster in the woods, a sword fight, and the Wishmaster ends up killing him by stabbing him. And I'm thinking, okay, that was a load of fucking waste. What was the whole point of this guy's character? This angel, was he a good guy or a bad guy? You know, and if so, what was the whole point of his character? Only if he would get brought in and get killed by the Wishmaster? Not much of a hero, is he? But it's one of those scenes where you can't help but laugh what's going on because it's like the cheapest solution to the problem. Oh yeah, we'll bring your hero down, but we'll leave the audience confused and get him killed off by the Wishmaster straight away. So another scene that I loved where was going on is where where the Jin's inside that lap dancing club, a strip club, and he has an altercation with the bouncer, you know, the guard. And there's that scene where they're in the alleyway fighting, and he says, "I wish you could put up a better fight," and he goes, "Granted." And here he is in that cheap gargoyle suit again, yet again, and he's like, "Let's see what you got, tough guy." You know, grabs his hand and says, "That is the best way to lose a hand, my friend." You know, breaks his knuckles, blood spurts out, burns his other hand, and then picks him up and shoves him onto part of this fencing, making the spike go through his heart, basically. And he pulls him off and throws him in the fucking trash. I like that scene. I like that little scene where he played like a bit of a comedy side of the Djinn. They broke the rules like it kind of reminded me of Nightmare on Elm Street, where they made the Djinn and Freddy more serious in the first 2 movies, but as in the sequels went on, they had like a bit of a comedic side to him. So I love that little cheesy altercation scene. But again, we get the bad CGI effects again. The flames come up. They're still nagging the Wishmaster to grant the 3rd wish. He's reminding them yet again, saying that he can't grant the 3rd wish. But he'll find a solution to the problem, basically, because he doesn't want to let the ancestors down, and he's aware that with the grant of the 3rd wish, the rest of the genies and the Jinns can take over the world, basically. That's the original plan. I mean, again, it takes me back to the script again. This film, if they wouldn't have taken so many cheap shortcuts, and if they wouldn't have tried to look for cheap solutions to put in scenes like that angel getting killed off by the Jinn, and if they would have put more heart and soul into this script, and more heart and soul into the characters, even though I didn't have a problem with the characters, this could have been a making of a good sequel. That's just my honest opinion. But it's like a cheap way out, basically. They look for the cheapest way out possible in every scene of this movie. Because it's like the ending scene, you know, where he confronts her, he shows his real form to the girl, and he's saying to her, "I can give you unlimited power, I can look like anybody who you want me to look like. Your world is in the palm of my hand, you can have anything you want, only if you find it in your heart to love an ugly creature like himself." Then the boyfriend who can now walk, who we all hate, or at least I can't help but hate the guy because he was a self-pity arsehole, who can now walk, he wished for a way to kill the Wishmaster. And this is where the biggest no-no happened. He wishes for a way to kill the Wishmaster. He says granted, and now he's got a sword. So that sword is the way to kill the Wishmaster. But rewind back. What did the Jinn say in part 1? That is internal, cannot die. Yet this sword is a solution to the death of the Jinn. So he basically signs his own death warrant, the Jinn does, by granting him a wish for him to kill him, and that's with the sword. And didn't he get killed with the sword in part 3, if I remember correctly? Anyhow, he ends up getting stabbed with the sword, but then the guy in the wheelchair who saves the day dies of his wounds, and the leading girl is all alone as she walks away just before the credits roll. So I think they deliberately try to make this movie the last. I think they realised that these movies weren't going anywhere. I think they realised that it wasn't going to be a successful franchise, because they panned the first movie also, which I thought was a big mistake, because I like part 1. So let me tell you briefly about all 4 movies. The first movie is definitely the best. Disagree with what all the critics say about it. It's the best one in the franchise. Second one, major step down, a big disappointment. Third one, pure fucking bollocks. Fucking hate part 3. Part 4, a cheap movie with what could have been a great movie. That's the most bluntly way I can put it. Because even the Wishmaster look in part 4 looks even cheaper than the one in part 3. He's like a green gargoyle, you know. The first Wishmaster look in the first Wishmaster movie was like this, but let's face it, Andrew Divoff is greatly missed after part 2. Nobody made this franchise more than Andrew Divoff. He brought the Wishmaster to life. It's just a shame that he didn't appear in part 3, but he had his reasons. If those reasons are accurate, please check out that review. But in part 4, I was fine with the actors. I was fine with them. Better than the ones in part 3. But again, not 5-star actors, and it was a cheap movie. Cheap, but could have been good. I don't know if they would have done that with more money. But after the way number 3 turned out, I seriously doubt they had a lot of money to do part 4. So they look for the cheapest way option. So cheap CGI, cheap scenes, cheap wishes, you know, just pure cheap. But I didn't hate it. I really didn't hate it. Not like I did with part 3 anyway. But there you go. This movie came out in the year 2002, so it came out the following year of Wishmaster 3. And they've obviously made it clear that this is going to be the last one. It's a shame, because this could have been something special. It could have been up there with Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. But like I said, there's only 4 installments in this franchise, so it's a great shame. And that's basically it. The Wishmaster franchise has come to an end, everybody. Thanks for watching my reviews, and please leave me comments, leave me thoughts. Just tell me what you think about this movie. Do you have different opinions to me? I know we can't always agree on everything, but it's down to taste at the end of the day. Taste and opinions, and we've all got different ones. So do what you gotta do. Thanks, everyone. Move on to a different franchise in the next review. Peace out.